Hey guys, welcome back to Busted Seams. It has been a minute. Sorry about that. Things have been a little bit crazy in my off-camera life, but I wanted to jump back in and show you a really cool video of me playing around with CLO3D. So I make corsets in my spare time, of which I have very little these days, but I wanted to try to build a corset pattern in CLO3D, and I'm just going to show you a little piece of the process today, just kind of trying to get the sizing right and trying to get all of the seams to line up correctly. So yeah, let's jump right in. Okay, so I wanted to build a corset pattern in CLO3D. So I took a 10-panel corset that I had a pattern for IRL, and I scanned it and pulled it into CLO and stitched it together. So you can see it's underbust, and I've got this little V cut out at the bottom just for a style line. I have my avatar turned off, but if you come up here, you can toggle it on to see how it fits on the body. I'm going to leave my avatar turned off so I can see inside and out of my garment. So as you can see, I've drawn a line at what's supposed to be the baseline on one half of my pattern, but you can see it's not perfectly aligning. So I really want to be able to get accurate waistline measurement for this pattern before I turn it into more versions of a corset. So we're going to see if we can get these to line up a little bit better and give us a true waistline. Okay, so now I'm going to come into my 2D pattern window. Never mind those glasses, they're just a goofy thing I threw on my avatar. So as you can see, if you click in your 3D pattern window, it'll highlight the coordinating pattern piece in your 2D pattern window. I look at a lot of corset patterns, so I can tell by eye what each of these is supposed to be, but especially when you get to more complicated patterns with things like collars and sleeves and waistbands and things like that, it's really nice to be able to spot check and sort of click anywhere on a garment pattern piece, either in the 3D or the 2D window, and have it highlight the coordinating piece in your 2D window. You can also see there's a little blue dot anywhere you click, so it's really good for kind of narrowing down exactly what part of the garment you're looking at. Okay, so you can see my first line on my center front piece is pretty straight, but not perfectly straight. So I'm going to see if I can fix that in my 2D pattern window. I'm going to come up here and get my edit pattern tool and see if I can figure out future me here. Yeah, this is a measurement line, not an internal pattern line or a baseline. So I spent 5 minutes trying to figure out why I couldn't edit it. Okay, so now I know that these are measurement lines. I can start to line them up a little bit and then maybe get my proper baselines so that I have a good starting point. So the reason I did measurement lines is because I wanted to get a true waist measurement of the actual garment. It is a little tricky on corsets. You want to get the true smallest point in the waist, and that's deceptive because it's not always the smallest point across the pattern piece itself. It's really where all those pieces line up and hit the natural waist. So you can see I guessed, but I didn't get it totally right, so we're going to fix it. So I'm going to come up here to my measurement line tool and nudge this a little bit so that I can get it as close to horizontal on the 3D window as I possibly can. Mess with that just a little bit. That is looking a little better. Maybe this one can come down. I'm going to turn off some of my snap too, so I can get a little bit more detailed with the measurement. Also, if you hold Control or Command on Mac, you can, it'll be a little less like sticky as you drag the lines around. It'll not want to snap to things as much. Okay, so it's pretty horizontal now. So I think it's time to move to the next piece. So let's move over here to our side front body piece. You can see it highlights, so I know I'm on the right one. And let's go to my measurement line tool and let's see if I can get it to line up perfectly. It's a little hard to see because it's highlighted, but we're going to zoom in and get it as close as we can. Okay, so bring this guy down just a hair. Oh, too far. Right about there. Okay, that's about as good as it's going to get. Let's zoom back out and try to get this a little bit more horizontal. So come into the other end and let's pull this side down a little bit more, getting there. Okay, that's starting to look a lot better. It's starting to point towards that narrowest part of the waist. So we need to move to our side body panel and do the same thing. I'm just going to fast forward here so you don't have to watch me do the same thing over and over like a crazy person. Okay, so this is looking pretty straight, actually. We're going to check it on our avatar. So let's come over here and toggle on our avatar. And then another cool thing is we can do translucent surface and we can see through the garment. It looks pretty straight, but honestly, I think this whole line can come down by maybe like a 1/2 inch. And there we go. Okay, so we brought the whole line down. Okay, so that is looking a lot better, a lot more. See how it's hitting basically that smallest point on the avatar's waist now? So I'm actually pretty happy with that. Okay, so an easy way to add up all these measurements without having to do obnoxious math is to just hold shift and click on each one. And then if you look in the property editor on the right side of the screen, you can see that it adds it up for us, which is awesome. So 12.27 inches, a little over 12 1/4. It's actually too big for a 23-inch base size. So what I'm gonna have to do is adjust that down. I think the easiest way to do that is to take this center back line of that very back panel and just take it out of there. It's not going to do anything to the fit of the corset because if you look, I really like where the front panel lines are falling and that side panel is pretty much perfectly on the side of the avatar. So I think, yeah, I'm going to just take it out of the back, center back closure, because really that's not going to be fully closed anyway. And here I have it, you know, stitched together in clo just to get the garment to stay on. So let's adjust this down and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna take my back edge, I'm gonna pull it in. If you look at the purple number at the top, you can see it's telling me exactly how much I'm pulling it in, about 3/4, so 0.75 inch is about what I need to get this in that 11.5 inch total waist measurement for one side versus the 14.5 that I was getting. So let me give that a second to save. There we go. So I have a little bit to fix because I had the binding going all the way across the top and the bottom when I had it sewn together, so I'll fix that. But you can see now I have this nice open gap. It will lace up on, you know, a real garment. I haven't perfected animating that in CLO3D, so that'll be a future video. So for now, I'm just going to put a little faux panel in there, almost like a modesty panel, just to sew it together so that the garment stays on the avatar. Okay, so we're going to edit the sewing. So I'm going to delete this line. You can see that's where it was sewing together before I reduced the panel. So I'm just going to click on it and hit delete. Come over here in my 2D window and I'm going to draw a rectangle basically to be that modesty panel. Get it to where it's a little bit short of the full length of that center back panel. I usually do, if there is a modesty panel, it's got a little bit of an overlap, so this will just look a little bit more realistic when we simulate it in the 3D window. Adjust this down a little bit more, and then we can sew it together. We are going to do free sewing, and I'll tell you why, because this isn't, we don't want it to bunch when we sew a shorter seam to a longer seam. We really want it to be offset. So I'm going to start a little bit lower than the top edge, and you can see it kind of automatically gives me the ideal stopping point for the length of that panel. And I am actually going to go in here and add a notch. I should have done that in the first place. Just offset a little ways down where I want the sewing to start. And since I have these patterns being edited symmetrically, the other corresponding pattern piece on the other side, if we scroll over, should have that notch. Let's take a look. Yep, there we go. Okay, so now we have a perfectly matched starting point to sew the other side. So I'm going to do, again, free sewing. I'm going to sew this complete side of the faux modesty panel to this offset area here, starting at the notch, and then going down to this little dot that it created. And you can see kind of the stitching. So now before I simulate and have this all kind of bounce together and stitch together in the 3D window, it's best to position this new piece as closely to where it's going to fall into place as possible, so that we reduce any collision issues when we do simulate. Get him a little bit closer. There we go. That's pretty good. Let me turn on threads. Okay, so there we go. See, you can see everything's nice and straight. Each side is stitching down to the appropriate side. Nothing's twisted. Nothing's flipped. And now we cross our fingers and simulate. Okay, so let me turn off simulation. So you can see that since I didn't fix the binding on the top and bottom, it is sewing together, and it's making this sort of weird shape. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete the top and bottom binding and just redo the whole thing. Okay. And then if we simulate, perfect, look at that. That is what I want it to look like. So that is looking pretty good. But for now, let's get our binding tool and click our starting point and just kind of drag along and then double click our end point. And it should do it for both sides because, again, I have symmetrical sewing on. Okay, let's go ahead and do the bottom, and then I'll fix like the binding properties itself. Okay, double click on the end, give it a second. Excellent. Okay, so I want the binding to be a little bit wider. It usually ends up being about 3/8 of an inch on a finished corset when all is said and done. So I'm going to come over here to my property editor. It's at 1/4 now. Let's go 0.375, which is 3/8. And we're also going to change the type from under to both, so it'll do both sides, so it will be like a true wraparound binding, like in real life. And then hopefully when we simulate again, it will fix some of that wiggly stuff you're seeing. So I'm just going to adjust the bottom to 3/8 of an inch and change it to both sides. There we go. Okay, so now let's simulate and see what we did. Nice. Okay. That is looking pretty dang good. You can see the little modesty panel. It's stretching out a little bit, but that doesn't bother me. When I get a little bit more experience under my belt and I can properly build the lace-up grommet lines in the back, I will add that. But yeah, I think that does it. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And this is ready for me to use this as a starting point to make a bunch of different shapes of corsets, maybe something that's a little bit longer at the bottom or pointed at that center front right at the bust. But yeah, overall pretty happy with how this turned out now that I've got everything trued up on my waistline. But yeah, I will probably do another video editing some corsets in CLO3D because it's really fun. So leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and drop me a comment if you want to see more like this. If you have questions, if there's something you want to see me build in CLO3D, I would love the challenge. So yeah, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.